Hello and welcome to our Euronews YouTube live in Brussels and Paris to analyze the political French turmoil in which the country has fallen. I'm here in Brussels with one of our French journalists, Alice Tidy. Hello.
Hello.
And we'll be live with our two correspondents in Paris, Sofia Katenskova and Lauren Chadwick. So, what is the situation? What's going to happen? What are the consequences for France and for the EU? We'll try to provide you with all the details to understand this situation. Yesterday, the French Parliament voted a no confidence vote against the government of Michel Barnier, a vote supported by the left wing bloc, le Nouveau Front Populaire, and by the far right, mainly the National Rally of Marine Le Pen. This no vote confidence comes after the use of Article 49.3 on the social security budget and the budget. This articles allows to push through a bill without a vote of member of parliament. So how did we get there? I'm turning to Alice Tidy to explain us what happened the last 6 months in France.
Well, it all started pretty much unraveling for Macron and his centrist forces back in June when there were EU-wide elections. And Macron's centrist Renew party was absolutely crushed by the far right. So the National Rally of Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella came in first with about 31% of the vote, whereas Macron's party came in a very, very distant second with just 15% of the vote. So faced with those results, Macron responded by calling in a snap election, which he said he wanted clarification, quote unquote, clarification from the French public on what they wanted their leadership to be given the result of the European election. What emerged from the snap elections, which were concluded about a month later, is a very fractured parliament. Up till then, Macron had a relative majority. His forces declined even further. So the RN became the biggest single party in the National Assembly, that's the lower chamber of parliament, with about 120 seats. And it's actually the left-wing coalition that came in first with about 180 seats. And this coalition includes several parties that range from the Communist Party, the far left France Unbowed Party, and then more moderate forces, namely the Greens and the Socialist Party. The issue is that everybody is very, very far away from the absolute majority of 288 seats, so some sort of coalition was needed. So Macron and his then Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, were hoping to form some sort of what they called a rainbow coalition of moderate forces, which I think they envisioned would likely include, of course, their forces, the centrist forces, as well as the PS, the Socialist Party, the Greens, and the Républicains, but none of these people can work together. Basically, the PS and the Greens said they wouldn't give up their alliance with France Unbowed, and Macron's forces just refused to work with LFI, which they see as just as radical as the RN. So what followed was basically 2 months of names being sent into the media, being tested in the media. And after about 50 days, Macron nominated Michel Barnier, someone who is known in France, of course, because he's 73 and has had a very illustrious career. He's been a 4-time minister, but also in the EU because he's been an EU commissioner twice, and he's also known as Mr. Brexit. And he named him primarily because he figured he would be probably one of the only figures in France who could survive a no confidence vote and be appointed. But what Barnier ended up leading is a minority government made up of the centrist forces of Macron and his own party, Les Républicains, so the right-wing Républicain party. But this party, Les Républicains, actually also lost a lot of seats in the snap elections. They only have about 40 seats. So since the late September, the government has pretty much worked with the tacit endorsement of the far right. And the far right withdrew that endorsement 2 days ago over the budget, which means that Barnier will now go down as the shortest serving prime minister of the French Fifth Republic, and he's also the first government to be toppled since 1962. So that's quite a legacy for him.
It is. So today is going to be a highly sensitive day. This is the day after for French politics, but not only for the politics, but also there are many demonstrations taking place all over the country. Let's go to Paris with Sophia, who's on the ground. Can you explain us why people are getting on the streets and what is the atmosphere?
Absolutely. Well, millions of civil servants are called to strike this Thursday, not just in Paris, but all across the country. As you can see here behind me, the protesters have already started gathering here in Paris. The official protest starts at 2 p.m. And we're standing in front of the Ministry of Finances. Why this location? Well, that's because the protesters are opposing the spending cuts proposed by Michel Barnier's government for next year. And demonstrations are planned across multiple cities in France, and significant disruptions are going to happen. And we're talking about hospital workers, teachers, energy sector workers. 7 out of 10 teachers are on strike, according to unions today. Multiple airports also in Paris, Marseille, and Toulouse are impacted, with multiple flights cancelled. And a lot of the public services all across France in town halls are also impacted, because one of the reasons is that next year's budget asked multiple of these public town administrations to come up with massive budget cuts, which angered a lot of the mayors. Back to you, Brussels.
Thank you, Sophia. So we understood that this government has fallen because of the budget. So now let's turn to our next correspondent, Lauren, to explain us. Lauren, can you explain us, give us the problematic points of this budget? What were the difficulties?
Yeah, absolutely. So Michel Barnier was looking to cut around 60 billion euros from the budget. They were hoping to reduce the deficit in France to 5% of the GDP. The deficit in 2023 was 5.5% of GDP. It was expected to grow in 2024. Public debt was increasing in 2024. When the no confidence vote was announced, it was the opposition parties had called this a budget of austerity. They were very concerned about cuts to public finances. Some of the kind of key points were higher electricity taxes, which the government had kind of moved on in favor of Marine Le Pen. Marine Le Pen was very concerned about retirement, people's retirements. They wanted that to be reduced and not indexed with inflation. And now that the budget has not passed, actually pensions will go up with inflation. So a bit of a win for pensions and for retirees and their pensions after this budget was thrown out. There are also cuts specifically to the education ministry, and so today we're seeing a lot of people in the education ministry and teachers who are coming out to strike. They were expecting some 4,000 job cuts, and a lot of universities in France were also concerned about budget cuts, saying that they wouldn't necessarily have space for students, and we're very concerned about cuts to the education. This is kind of happening at a very complicated time economically for France. We've seen that layoffs are increasing. There is an estimation that there will be 150,000 layoffs next year in France. So this was a very heated discussion over a budget amid a complicated economic situation.
Thank you, Lauren. So, of course, this the situation in France was followed for a long time, and all observers were expecting difficulties. Of course, this fall of this government has engendered many reactions. Let's start with the markets, as it's the budget which was the the sparkle of this fall. The markets have reacted or anticipated the fall of Michel Barnier government. The Paris Stock Exchange this morning rose by 0.65% around 10 a.m. today. The euro was little changed, so we can imagine that the markets had anticipated this situation. However, these trends that we see today are in sharp contrast with the concern we had seen at the beginning of the week, when we could imagine that this government would fall. So, of course, the markets are watched closely, but there are also political concerns from all over Europe. Alice, do we have reaction from member states or from European institutions?
So not yet. Traditionally, European institutions tend to reply that they don't comment on the domestic developments, political developments of their member states, and that they're happy to work with any governments that comes in. But I think genuinely people are worried across the EU, because France and Germany are generally thought of as the engine of the EU and of the Eurozone. And right now, both countries are now in a political crisis. So as a reminder, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz sacked his finance minister about a month ago, triggering the collapse of his own coalition. And now elections in Germany are planned for February 23rd, I believe. So having these two EU countries in turmoil at the same time is definitely not optimal. Primarily because we have a number of challenges, a number of crises that the EU has to get a stake in. So of course there's Ukraine, but then also there are a lot of worries about the continent's competitivity vis-a-vis China and the US, and of course real fears now that Donald Trump is back in the White House over trade wars, not only with China but with the US as well. So having this so-called engine now sputtering is creating some concerns over whether or not the EU can find those solutions to face those very real challenges that need very real answers very quickly. A reminder here is that the parliamentary arithmetics in France is not about to change, and it cannot change until the summer, because in the constitution, Macron is prevented from calling new elections until July at the earliest. So whoever comes in, whoever attempts to form a new government, will face exactly the same challenges Barnier faces. Already, though, there have been some consequences, because Michel Barnier was supposed to travel to Rome for a 2-day visit today, and obviously that has been cancelled now. So it remains to be seen whether or not a new government can be installed quickly, and what that will look like, because yes, the EU faces a number of challenges that definitely need a French voice to answer.
Okay, so we have the window of the situation, but now the question is what's going to happen next, and for that I'm going to turn back to our correspondent Sophia. So, okay, the government has fallen. What's going to happen in the coming hours or coming days?
Well, the first thing that's important to note is that Barnier will most likely stay on as a caretaker government for the moment. What does that mean? Well, that means that his government will expedite current affairs, so day-to-day business. However, they will not be able to vote or implement any new laws. And now the next steps are for Macron. He has the constitutional power to nominate the next prime minister. He also doesn't have any deadline to do so in the French constitution, but just as a reminder, this summer it took him more than 2 months to nominate Michel Barnier, and that's because he needs to find someone with a majority approval in the National Assembly. Otherwise, the MPs can simply once again set up a no confidence vote and have this new nominated prime minister fall again. Macron was already highly criticized this summer for taking on this sole role of finding a new prime minister. And analysts I spoke to last night as well as today all believe that now it's time for Macron to let it go and let the other parties within the National Assembly come up with a name. And that's because new legislative elections cannot be called before next July. Another thing that we've been hearing quite a lot, especially from the left-wing coalition, particularly the France Unbowed LFI hard left party, is that they're calling for Macron to resign, but constitutionally he's not obligated to do so, and it doesn't seem like it's an option on the table. A couple of days ago he responded to that, saying that he will absolutely not step down, and for the moment his term in office runs until spring 2027. Back to you, Greg and Alice.
Thank you, Sophia. So, as you mentioned, you talked about the parties to which Emmanuel Macron could turn to find maybe a new coalition. For that, let's see maybe with Lorraine what the parties have said or how they have reacted to the fall of Michel Barnier government.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of reactions this morning and also last night. So what we saw, obviously, the main reason that this no confidence vote went through was the support of the far-right Marine Le Pen and her Rassemblement National rally. So Marine Le Pen had said that this was not a victory, that she was very concerned about this budget. She called it a toxic budget and said that it would have affected purchasing power and that her job was to defend French people, and that was what she was doing in supporting this no confidence vote, in supporting the left wing, the leftist alliance in this no confidence vote. It comes at a very interesting time as well for Marine Le Pen, who is also facing trial and faces a potential declaration of being ineligible for election. And a lot of analysts were talking about how the timing of this being during Marine Le Pen's trial over misuse of European money, how the timing could have played into her decision as well. A lot of analysts are kind of interested in the thought process for Marine Le Pen in voting for this, in voting in favor for the no confidence vote, especially because this government had only been in power for 3 months, so there wasn't a lot of time for this government to make changes. Then there was also reaction from the president of the Assemblée Nationale, the French Parliament, who called it a collective failure and said that the parties had not kind of learned how to work together. This was something that we had talked a lot about during the elections, that this kind of weight of having no absolute majority, that the French Parliament is not used to having to make compromises, that they were going to have to learn how to compromise with each other, and that typically the French presidents have an absolute majority and can pass through laws in their budgets. And so she said that they needed to work together. She also is calling for President Macron to name a prime minister quickly. Otherwise, as we heard from Sophia, the leftist coalition, and particularly the kind of leftist party, La France Insoumise, which is not really in agreement with some of the other left-wing parties. There's disagreements on the way forward. But we saw with La France Insoumise and Mathilde Panot, who was a politician for an MP for La France Insoumise, who was really instrumental in this no confidence vote. She was saying this morning that there needs to be respect of French voters, and she wants to see it go back to the polls. She has been blaming the president and calling on him to step down, blaming him for the snap elections that happened in June and July of this year. She also criticized the fact that the leftist coalition's prime minister candidate was not picked by the French president earlier this year, the candidate that they put forward, exactly for the reason the president had said, that it could lead to political instability. So she thinks, on the left-wing side, on the leftist coalition side, in the France Insoumise, they're really calling for this to go to snap presidential elections.
Thank you, Lorraine. So now the game is to try to find out who could be the next prime minister. It took 2 months last time. There will be no Olympic pose this time for Emmanuel Macron to choose. Michel Barnier was a bit of a surprise, so the exercise will be, we'll try to find out, we'll provide you with some names. Alice, what is the first name that would comes up?
Remains, I think, probably the top choice. As we heard from Sophia, he could very well carry on in a caretaker capacity. Although in an interview he did the night before the no confidence vote on Tuesday night, he actually said that it wouldn't make much sense for him to try to form a new government, given that he was censored by the parliament. So I don't think he would want to attempt to form a government. So if he stays on, he would very much be in a caretaker capacity. Another name that's making the round is Sébastien Lecornu. He's probably the best known one, at least here in the EU bubble, because we see him fairly regularly as he is the outgoing Minister for the Armed Forces. So he was he started his political career with the right wing Les Républicains, so from Barnier's party, but he switched to Renew when Macron was elected, and in fact he's been in government since 2017. So I'd say he's probably in the lead position in terms of name recognition, and because he's well known to the LR and to the centrist forces of Macron.
Indeed, the next prime minister will need to get a wide majority to please maybe on both sides. One other name that is coming back often could be François Bayrou. So he's the leader of the MoDem, the centrist party. He has been a strong supporter of Emmanuel Macron since his way to the presidency in 2017. He was a close advisor. It is said that he has taken a bit a step back with Emmanuel Macron those last years. However, he remains highly influential around the president. And it is said that he has a large support from both sides, left and right-wing member of parliament. Is there any other name you could provide?
So there is another one called François Barouin. He is from Les Républicains Parti, so again right-wing party of Michel Barnier. He is currently the mayor of the eastern city of Troyes, but he is a very well-known entity to the French public because he's been in government several times. He was interior minister for Jacques Chirac, who was president for 14 years, something like that. And then he was also finance minister under Nicolas Sarkozy, but he's also been an MP, he's also been a senator, he's been the vice president of the National Assembly. He also is the president of the Mayor Association, so he's very well known. He's considered quite a heavyweight in Les Républicains. In fact, his name always crops up in the month leading to presidential elections, but he's very discreet, and so far he's always sort of shied away from heavy responsibility. So to see whether or not this time is the right time for him to step up.
We'll see. And there's a female name, Lucie Castet, also, that is possible. She's from we could say she's a civil servant, so she doesn't belong to a party, but she has been pushed forward by La France Insoumise. So
that makes her pretty much an outsider in this case, because she's the choice of La France Insoumise.
Exactly, she would be an outsider. She's a civil servant, an economist. We'll see. But she said this week that she was prepared to govern. Now it's up to Emmanuel Macron to decide. However, he is free to decide who he wants as a prime minister. Michel Barnier was himself a bit a surprise. So now all eyes are turning to Emmanuel Macron. But this decision of designating a new prime minister and maybe a new government happens at an awkward time. Sophia, in Paris, the timing is not the best for Emmanuel Macron to designate a new prime minister. Oh, okay. We have a technical problem. So Emmanuel Macron is going to is going to do a statement tonight at 8 o'clock Paris time. We'll see if he will be able to give us already the name of the next prime minister. Some observers are saying it's more to calm down the political situation, to digest this new political situation, this turmoil. We'll see what is the next step. Emmanuel Macron, who learned about the fall of this government on his way back from Saudi Arabia, he had landed just a few minutes before this government fell down. So we'll see. Emmanuel Macron has met this morning. Michel Barnier went to the Élysée to meet the president. They spent an hour together. They must have talked, I guess, about the next steps and what is possible. We'll see. It has lasted 1 hour. Now, Emmanuel Macron must be preparing his statement that is going to be important for the political situation in France. So this fall from the government indeed happened at a moment where Emmanuel Macron hoped to turn a bit the highlights on his difficulties because Notre Dame should open this weekend. That's what our correspondent. Okay, that's what our correspondent will cover for us. Indeed, Emmanuel Macron will welcome several head of states from all over the world. So he's going to be welcoming all his pairs in a weakened situation, so difficult for him. Of course, we will follow all this in the coming hours, in the coming days on Euronews and Euronews.com. I've been told that our technical problem is over. So let's go back to Paris with Sophia. Sophia, I see that you are with a demonstrator. Back to you.
Yes, absolutely, Brussels. So I'm currently standing here with Remy. Remy, you are a high school teacher here in a Parisian suburb, and you came to protest today with the NPI. It's the new anti-capitalist party. Tell me a little bit why you came here today. Why was it important for you to be here?
So I'm here today because I want to protest against the government policy, against the job cuts, against the austerity. I think that it's just unbearable for the French people, and I think as my party that the capitalism is in cause. So yeah, I'm here to protest against all of that.
And so how did you react about yesterday with the Barnier's government collapsing? Is that good news, bad news? What is your reaction to it?
Good news, because we can stand with that government. It's a bourgeois government, but it's also mitigated because Barnier or another, it's the same policy, and we just want to have another way of politics. French people voted for the left last summer, and today we don't have what we voted for. So yeah, we protest against all of the bourgeois governments.
And so just one last question to you. So, we've been hearing these past years, decades, the working conditions for teachers in public schools has been degrading. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience? How difficult is it to teach? How many students do you have? What's your workload like?
Today we have like 30 students per class in high school, but the projects of laws, because of the demographic decline, is to increase the number of students to 40 per classes. So it's just impossible to have normal conditions of work and to help students to improve their abilities. So we protest against that also, and I think that it's really the point of this government, they think about the bosses, the capitalism, but they don't think about their youth, about their people.
Okay, well, you heard it here live from Paris, here with Remy. Remy, a high school teacher, also came here with the new anti-capitalist party, the NPA. Remy, thank you so much for doing this interview in English. Very kind of you. And back to you, Brussels. We'll keep, obviously, getting more interviews and covering live. Back to you, Greg and Alice.
Thank you, Sophia. Sophia, can you stay with us one more minute? If you can, before you go back in the demonstration. Before this interview, I was mentioning the awkward time of this fall of the government happen. It's going to be difficult for Emmanuel Macron. He's going to welcome, I would say, the world in the coming days in Paris.
Yes, absolutely, Greg. Well, this comes at a really awkward time for Macron, since Saturday marks the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. As a reminder, the cathedral has been closed for renovations since 2019 after a fire ravaged its roof. And on Saturday, we're expecting multiple heads of state, including U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. And it's quite a big victory for Macron on the international stage, because France lands Donald Trump's first international visit. And this choice may come as a surprise, because countries like the UK and Germany would have probably liked to receive Donald Trump first. So it's definitely, quite a victory for Macron in his efforts to really reposition himself on the international stage. And that's one of the reasons that we're hearing from Macron's entourage that the president would like to nominate a prime minister before Saturday, before the ceremony of reopening of Notre Dame, as a way to make it look on the international stage like France has some sort of stability. And as a reminder, the president will address the French public tonight at 8 p.m. Paris time. And of course, we'll keep you updated here live from Paris and of course from Brussels. Back to you, Greg and Alice.
Thank you, Sophia, and we'll follow you in the demonstrations and, of course, after Emmanuel Macron statement later tonight. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Lauren from Paris. Alice, thanks for highlighting us about the European consequences. Thank you for watching, following us. Of course, we'll be following very closely what is happening in France and its consequences in Paris, in France, and in Europe. You can follow us on Euronews and Euronews.com. Thank you.
Newly revealed declassified information suggests a state actor may have been behind Georgescu's campaign.
France's Prime Minister will submit his resignation to the country's president after being ousted by a no-confidence vote in Parliament.